While there's finally a lot to get excited about when it comes to the future of Pokemon TCG Live, it's not all sunshine and foot rubs. The major disconnect issues that started after Ascended Heroes in January, then kicked into overdrive last month with Perfect Order, aren't being addressed yet. According to a tweet reply that should have been a full statement, they said, "The team is aware of player reports regarding an increase in the frequency of disconnections while in matches. Unfortunately, it's still being investigated, but they will give us an update when more information is available." I don't put too much stock into that last sentence because this is the first time they've mentioned it in the few months it's been happening. And that's despite the #1 PTCGL player of 2022 being forced to restart the game multiple times per stream. Alright, now that I got that rant foreplay out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. After several years, the dev is finally fixing the card select glitch. This happens to me multiple times per week and ironically happened on stream literally 5 minutes after they announced the patch. Basically, when you go to select a card from deck after playing something like Buddy Puffin or Ultra Ball, one of the valid targets isn't selectable. It's cost people countless games, and it seemed like the dev didn't know how to fix it. Well, it may have Peregrine took nearly 4 years, but they finally figured out how to address it. Or this is wishful thinking by the dev, and when we all boot up the game on Tuesday after 8 hours of maintenance, it'll be even worse than before. But I choose to be hopeful for the first time in my life about something the TCG Live dev is doing. It's not only years-long bugs getting addressed. If you'll recall, despite having just 81 new cards, Perfect Order was kind of a disaster with multiple cards broken. Tuesday's update will fix all of them, starting with Mega Armory. When using Sonic Ripper, only the energy should go back into your deck. The dev screwed this up, forcing any attached tools to also get shuffled in. Because no one used the new Shaman, I wasn't aware of this issue, but apparently if you use Send Flowers to accelerate an energy from deck, the game would break. While Live has had issues with hand sizes, especially when it comes to Mega Frostlass and counting cards in their hand, Decidueye's problems seem to be relegated to the test deck side of things. Turns out that was wrong. Somehow, if your opponent used a technical machine the previous turn, Sniper's Eye wouldn't activate even if they had 4 cards in hand. I thought Naveen's problem was that it discarded your entire hand if you had less than 5 cards. In actuality, Naveen was only a Carmine when you had exactly 3 other cards in hand, which somehow makes even less sense. For the 5th and final card from Perfect Order that was broken, representing 6% of the set, we have Turtonator. Apparently, if their active accelerated energy with the effect of an attack, like Regirock CX's Regicharge, Shell Spikes might not get rid of that energy. They're also fixing an issue with the expanded Kingdra locking up the game, and Guardians Rising Mimikyu not being able to copy Mega Zygarde's core memory. For more general fixes, they're addressing something else that I, the 4-year unpaid beta tester, discovered. In the Dragapult free deck given to all players throughout 2026, instead of 4 copies of Buddy Puffin, there were 4 copies of Caretaker. This is because Caretaker is TWM 144, whereas Puffin is TEF 144. So they mixed up the set abbreviations. While the fix isn't retroactive, you already have 4 Puffin in your collection from several of the other free decks, so it doesn't matter. It's hard to call these new features given that PTCGO had some, but Live is getting multiple improvements to deck building. First up, when importing a list from the description of your favorite YouTuber's video, you'll now be able to choose to auto-select either own cards or rarest own cards. I personally always include lowest rarity in my list so new players don't have to make changes. But now people with no lives who've spent years in this game can automatically have their full art supplied without any extra effort. Probably my favorite addition is a full screen deck viewer. PTCGO had this, and it's embarrassing that it took 4 years for Live to get it too. But instead of having to squint to see your cards in the bottom right, you'll get a full view. They didn't provide screenshots though, so we'll all experience it for the first time together on Tuesday. Additionally, it'll be easier to tell which cards you don't own in the rarity selection menu. This is another topic I covered in my Mistakes New Players Make video because they can't seem to find the alternate arts. If that's you, just click on a card, then click Available to see every possible variation. They add that more improvements are coming to the deck editor in the future, which is music to my ear holes. While it's something you could have easily missed in the announcement, this new feature ain't minor like Tarragon. Assuming your phone hasn't exploded due to overheating after playing TCG Live for more than 10 minutes, Landscape Mode is coming to Android and iOS. It's optional and will only work on compatible devices, and is another thing we should have received 3 years ago when the game left beta, but it's finally happening. Probably the biggest question you're wondering right now is, am I wearing pants? Also, what's with the seemingly out of nowhere turnaround in competency from the dev? Well, it's threefold. For starters, according to the person who leaks all over me after poking around in the game's backend, the Pokémon Company International has started using AI coding. The leaker adds that the expanded coding is going well, which is something they promised for 2026. Assuming the AI doesn't Control-Alt-Delete itself upon seeing live spaghetti code, this should lead to a better game. Another reason for the boost is they might have hired a second developer to go along with the unpaid intern they normally task with the game. Obviously, that's a joke, but according to the listing posted earlier this month, there's 3 people working on TCG Live. That only counts designers, sure, but it would make a lot of sense given the history of the game. Finally, they're switching the game engine to Unity 6. I don't really know what that means either. But according to Unity's blog post from 2 years ago, it basically means everything is better. The downside is that older Apple devices will no longer be supported. If you don't have at least iOS 15 on iPhone or Monterey 12 on Mac, you can't download Tuesday's update. For those wondering about Android and PC, the clearly superior platforms, nothing's changing. At the very end of the developer letter, they said there's a lot of exciting content coming to TCG Live in the near future. One potential thing it might be is in-game tournaments with an impact on the path to the World Championships according to a recent job listing. If you're worried about Live being used for tournament play, that's a natural reaction. But clearly the Pokemon Company International is finally stepping up and putting resources into the game. And remember, PTCGL was used to host shop tournaments when they were struggling due to lockdowns, so the president is there. Before I go, after 6 months of silence, they finally updated the known issues page for TCG Live. On the gameplay side of things, they know the AI in test deck will still use expanded decks even when you're testing a standard deck. That's been something they've struggled with for years to get right. No word on if they'll improve the AI to, actually attack and not focus on decking itself out. They also mentioned that disconnecting and reconnecting might see you still unable to do anything, with the last line acknowledging that disconnects are happening more frequently. And if cards aren't loading in properly, they say restarting should fix that. On the card logic side of things, it appears to be just older issues only affecting expanded cards. Lastly, they mentioned we still might not receive a notification when someone disconnects from a match. All in all, for the first time in 4 years, it seems like TPCI finally cares about Pokemon TCG Live. Features we've requested since day one are being added, most of which were already present in Pokemon TCG Online, which was sacrificed to Arceus so Live could live. While it's still missing several things PTCGO had, in the last year or two, Live has received things like a game log, a card deck's automatic final prizes, and now a full-screen deck viewer. If you abandon PTCGL at any point due to its horribleness, consider re-downloading it in a few months. Because if they continue this trend of making improvements, it might finally be the PTCGO successor we always thought it would be.